has been working on these issues of improving educational achievement very diligently and working individually and sometimes working together with each other. So why do you think the Massachusetts Educational Partnership is needed to be formed and go forward? Tom, do you want to start us off? And I think, let's hope that's working.
Good. Take it off. When I was in high school, we always had to stand up in class when we spoke, so I'm going to do that here. Well, I would say with the four groups coming here together is based on a premise that collaboration is better than confrontation. This, however, does take an enormous amount of work. The ABC School District in California, which was one of the models throughout the nation for collaboration, I remember the president of the union saying, collaboration is much more demanding than confrontation because it really requires the two sides to work together. And if an issue is important to one side, then it has to be important to the other side. And I would say, very simply, on the union side, the significant change that I think that's required is to recognize that our role isn't just simply pursuing grievances, that it is also to get the best possible education for the kids, and that we adopt that as one of our mantras. And I think on management side, one of the most important things that has to come about is, hey, gee, the teachers are professionals. They're in that classroom every day. We have to listen very carefully to what they say.
Good. Thank you, Tom. Paul?
Sure. Since he started the precedent for standing up, I'll just do it quickly. As a middle school social studies teacher from Cambridge and then the local president of Cambridge before going on to run for the state office, I actually always ask the simple question, why? Why does the superintendent or the school committee, or we the teachers, why do we want to do something? Is it really going to benefit the students, and how can we make it happen? Just those simple questions. And I steal Brandy Weingarten's, Tom's national president's line all the time. If it's good for kids and fair for teachers, then we should talk about it. And I approach everything from that. And I also, throw a bunch of bumper stickers and slogans out there. We agree to disagree without being disagreeable. Tom, myself, Tom Scott, and Glenn Kuchar, at the statewide level, we all get along quite well. We can agree on a lot. We're not in the trenches like you anymore, having to figure out the minutia of how is it going to work, how is it going to be paid for, who's going to do what, etc. But at the state level, we've had conversations for a long time as part of Mass Partners, another organization which represents not only us, but the high school and elementary principals, the Parent Teachers Association, and we've talked for a long time. All four of us, we get along great, but we've been looking for, is there a place we can actually send our folks who are struggling with this work, quite honestly, are fighting over this work? And, Tom's people say they don't want it to be this way, how can they fix it? My people say, I don't really want it to be this way either, how can we fix it? Is there any technical support or assistance that's out there? And the answer was no, because none of our organizations specialized in mediation, counseling, facilitation, etc. And we're all quite busy. So when the opportunity to try to build an organization that could possibly offer that type of assistance was available, we jumped on it. Now, I will say that the three of us are all from Cambridge. Not he. He's from Dorchester. Dorchester, right? Right. So grew up in Dorchester. So we actually have not only common work history, we actually know an awful lot of the same people, and I don't know, we drank the water, so we're all into collaboration together. And I know Tom is too. Tom, every speech he gives, talks about collaboration. So all four of us very much wanted to see this happen, and we want to work with our locals and provide the support and, and help in any way we can.
Okay, thanks, Paul. So let me, I'll just build on that a little bit. One of the things that Paul and I have talked about on occasion when we share either his concern from a member or my concern from a member, is what we can do to try to resolve some of those differences. And we've frankly talked over time about, should we be thinking about some sort of a team that goes into a district that actually works with the superintendent and the union president to see if we can come to some better collaboration and some better way of communicating with each other. And so I think that this became a perfect opportunity when this partnership evolved. One of the important things for us, our association has been involved now for 3 years with what we call the new superintendent induction program. And it's a 3-year induction program that brings superintendents through a process where we do a lot of strategic thinking. We do a lot of work around what are the various stakeholder groups who are critically important in terms of being able to push an agenda over the course of time. And those stakeholder groups are a superintendent's leadership team, the school committee, and the union. Those are the teams that make the big difference. And so one of the things we do within our organization in terms of really sort of talking about developing a strategic plan is also how we build that relationship and that communication. And while we'll always continue to have struggles and try to work through those issues, I think what Paul described is that we all agree that those relationships are critically important. There's nothing a superintendent can do in terms of really making the progress that the district desires, that the community desires, without having the relationship with the people who really can make a difference in moving that agenda. And so one of the things we see in this partnership is how do we strengthen relationships, how do we strengthen the ability to communicate, and how do we strengthen creating the agenda that is going to allow us to move towards greater student achievement, and also for community satisfaction, which I'd love to talk about a little bit later in terms of the importance of how we relate to our communities.
I guess we're standing up.
If you want.
We'll sit down after this. I have a different perspective. I'm the only person on the panel who is not an educator by profession. I'm a gerontologist by training. And most of my life has been spent dealing with people as they age and healthcare policy related to it, except for 12 years on the world's greatest deliberative body, the Cambridge School Committee. And 12 years, isn't it? And 12 years at MASC to go by. I'm concerned because my experience has been as a community and parent activist who represents a lot of people in communities that want to have a say over what happens in public schools. And the problem is the bad guys want to take it all away from us. There's a massive movement in this country to weaken labor unions, starting with public employee unions, and then moving on to other unions and making it easy for corporate profits. There's a massive effort to try to privatize as much as public education as possible because private forms of education and charter schools and schools that take advantage of vouchers do not have labor relations to deal with. And that poses a real risk to us. In the meantime, there's always the danger of the marginalization of community input, and we represent people who are the people who provide community input. So we're always struggling to determine how school committees can effectively promote student achievement. And one of the ways that we know works is by engaging in collective bargaining for student achievement. And that's one of the things we're training our members to do. And one of the best ways to move towards collective bargaining for student achievement is to explore seriously interest-based bargaining and coming to the table collaboratively to prove to the skeptics that we are able to work together in the interest of children with the specific intent of improving outcomes for children in school.
Good. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's good stuff. Tom Gosnell has a comment to make.
I just want to add one thing. Randy Weingarten, president of the American Federation of Teachers, as she states over and over, the mantra of the guarantee is we want what's good for kids, fair to teachers, and collaboratively done. That all three of those are on the same tray and inseparable.
Good, thank you, Tom. I'm open, anytime someone has a question, wave your hand or stand up. We've got microphones. I'm going to come back and ask our panelists, it doesn't have to be everyone to answer, but there's one thing that you think stands in the way of doing what, Glenn, what you said, of using collective bargaining to really drive student achievement, that we need to change, that can be changed here at the district level or in the state. What would that one thing be, or what's high on your list to overcome in order to really accelerate the student achievement through collective bargaining? Glenn, why don't you start us off, and then anyone else, Joe as well. We won't go up and down and ask everyone to comment unless you have something to say.
Our toughest obstacle is decades of behaviors and cultures among the stakeholders. The union negotiating process is built on dignified bullying tactics, pressure, confrontational strategies. Attorneys drive the process, and you know attorneys love a good argument, and will probably be the biggest threat to interest-based bargaining because it's going to involve less use of attorney's time. And just getting everybody to think differently about how they do their work.
I would just say trust. It's difficult to build trust when we have turnover in our district leadership constantly. And even, you know, in the union leadership, there's significant turnover. The demographics of teachers right now is, I believe the number is something like 50% of teachers in Massachusetts have less than 10 years of experience. So we're going through a major change. You know, my local presidents are burning the candle at both ends, trying to be educators and leaders and policy experts and everything all at the same time. But the most important thing, and I heard this in the workshop I was in, is those relationships and building the trust. And if superintendents, the average lifespan is what, 3 years? 5 years, okay, 5 years. That's higher than I've heard recently. But you know, when they're coming in and coming out, and you know, we all talk about the only way to bring change is need a good 5 years, and then the new superintendent comes in with something completely different. This does not establish the trust. Now, I will say, on the union side, I think once we have that trust, we have to be more flexible. We have to be willing to talk about things. I personally believe in a living contract, that yes, you might negotiate a 3-year contract, but things can happen within those 3 years. You might need to sit down and talk about doing something a little bit differently. But if you have that trust and respect for one another, it can be accomplished.
Trust, trust, trust. It's undeniable. That is so vital and that is so essential. And I would suggest that one way that that can be put together is to work in an area where you know you agree. Rather than acting independently, act together. For example, it was said this morning that resources are very important. My experience with teachers is they want more resources. My experience with superintendents is they want more resources. This is an area where the two sides come together to work very effectively to enhance the education of our kids.
A major piece of this. I also think a common vision is important, because I think that part of what we deal with today, I think Paul referenced the turnover. You know, we have, I think it was best described this morning by talking about where we are in terms of what influences decision-making and what influences pressures that we all feel. I think in some ways we've all staked out our own ground. We haven't found the common stake to be able to rally around. And part of that is what I referenced earlier in terms of the need for a process to take place within a community It comes with some agreement as to what we're here for and what we're trying to accomplish, and then sort of rallying behind that and supporting each other in the process. Because too often, sort of we're picking each other off. And so when we talk about those districts that are even the most important for the work that we're doing, you know, I talked about 5 years is the average for the superintendent. Well, that's true. Statewide, it's about 5 years. But if you look at the districts where we have the greatest challenge, it's not 5 years. It's less than that. Because the pressures are that much greater, and the opportunities for difficulty take place that much more often, and people end up sort of being sort of the waste in the process. So what we happen is a cyclical thing going on where we never sort of get traction over the long term to really kind of make the difference we want to make. And what's happening, whether we like it or not, is there are a lot of different publics. I mean, Glenn referenced it, but we have a lot of people out there who are looking for another solution. And because we haven't sort of coalesced and gotten our act together, we've given others an opportunity to come in and invade our territory. And that is not going to get any better. That's only going to get worse. So for me, if we have any value of public education today, it's the urgency for us to come together and find better ways of creating that vision, supporting one another, and making sure we demonstrate to our communities what we're here for.
Joe?
I just wanted to add a couple things around trust. I couldn't agree more with what everybody said. You know, trust is key as our relationships, and it's relationships that build the trust. But trust isn't easy to define. It isn't any one thing. It's a kind of behavior over time that builds trust. And also the history of behaviors is hard to overcome. Stephen Covey said you can't behave your way out of a problem, you talked your way or acted your way into over time. You have to act your way over time. And also I think it's important to understand around trust. You think about a physician, you trust a physician who is skilled and has your best interest at heart. You wouldn't want to have just one or the other in either case. My best interest at heart, but doesn't know how to do the operations, not too good. Is only concerned about making money, may know how to do a good surgery, but that's not his interest. That wouldn't be good either. You need both. And I think that's the real challenge. It's the disposition and the relationships and wanting to do, and shared vision helps to do that, and continuing to act together even through difficulties and conflicts. But it's also building the skills, especially in some of your organizations that have in fact inculcated over time a whole different set of skills.